Satin Plebs, today we're going to be talking about Monarchs and how they're going to be shaping up in Shining Victories. So, setting like a bit of a structure, some groundwork for going forward with this discussion, let's begin and talk about the set itself, right? So, Monarchs don't need any introduction, they've been around for a while now, you guys know kind of how the builds go, the standards, lists and stuff like that. The deck has kind of evolved to the point where we kind of know everything that the deck is capable of, whether it uses an extra deck, whether it doesn't use an extra deck. So, I don't think there's much room for evolution for the deck going forward. You will need to adapt, obviously. But in terms of what cards are available to us, there's nothing that's coming that's going to be really impactful for Monarchs. So there's nothing in Shining Victories that's going to change the deck dramatically in the same way that something like Shining Victories is going to dramatically change how Cosmo play the game. There's nothing coming in Shining Victories that dramatically changes how Monarchs do it. Now, Cosmo, of course, got a lot of support, and it's going to really alleviate some of the issues that the deck has had against Monarchs, because of the fact that Monarchs, you know, previously they'd be able to Stormforce one of your ships, and sometimes that would be enough to like really put you in a bad situation as a Cosmo player. Now, with Fire King Island and your terraformings, you're going to be seeing this card very often. So, it's like consistency-wise, Cosmo are going to be able to put up bigger boards than you're going to be able to Stormforce Erebus and then Stormforce for them. You know what I mean? So there's obviously a bit of a skew towards Cosmo in their favor, I think, just because of the fact that consistency-wise, I think that Monarchs, while not as inconsistent as people make up, I think that they're going to have a tougher time dealing with these average plays than what the average Monarch play can consist of. So what does the deck have available to it currently? Well, Stormforce Erebus, Stormforce Faithful, like we've discussed already, is like one of the best plays in the game currently, like without a doubt. When the Monarch engine gets going, when you've got your return loops searching a new Monarch every turn, when you've got Aether coming out on your opponent's turn every turn, and then you're recycling your resources with things like Prime and Idea, going forward, I think that Monarchs are still a really, really dominant, powerful engine once they've got everything going. But I think Cosmo are a lot faster than Monarchs at getting their engine going and really advancing their game state. I think Cosmo pull ahead of Monarchs without a doubt. That's not to say that Monarchs, you know, are just going to lose from that point on. There's a lot of ways that Monarchs can help alleviate this problem in the shape of things like Floodgates. Now, obviously, the biggest one that we can think of straight off the bat is Majesty's Fiend, searchable through Return of the Monarchs, and if you're playing something like Escalation, for example, you're able to use this on your opponent's turn to your advantage. And in game one, at least, I think that Cosmo kind of just don't have an out, really, unless you're playing Cosmojos, which I don't think is actually the standard. A lot of people aren't really playing traps. Call of the Haunted could also be an issue, bringing back something bigger than Majesty's Fiend to attack over. But yeah, Stormforce itself, very powerful. Having that main decked one of Majesty's Fiend to search out is, you know, really powerful. It's going to give you a huge advantage if your opponent has very minimal outs. So yeah. In terms of the extra deck, however, this is the issue that I've had with Monarchs, is the fact that you can play Domain Monarchs and you're not really going to get much of an advantage at all against Cosmo. Probably going to shit all over your Burning Abyss opponents if they just don't have an out, fair enough. Which I still think are a contender, by the way. I don't think Reaper is as broken as people are making out. It does have its problems, but that's for another video. So against Burning Abyss, you're playing pure Domain Monarchs, you're going to be in a good position. Against Cosmo, the main build isn't really giving you anything, so we have to try look towards the extra deck, for example. Now, what's in the extra deck for Monarchs that deals with Cosmo? That's the issue. There's actually nothing that extra deck Monarchs have over Domain Monarchs against Cosmo, I think, anyway. Like, off the top of my head, like, Durandal is probably the best rank 5 you can make going first against Cosmo, because of the fact that you're able to negate the activation of, like, Fire King Island. But in general, in terms of like the extra deck itself, there isn't a lot there that really, really like alleviates the problems that Cosmos give you. So with extra deck, for example, against Burning Abyss, you can make Pleiades, you can go for game with things like Shark Fortress, but doing these things against Cosmo is probably going to be a bit harder because of the fact that they're going to have multiple ships and pilots on board, so clearing everything and then going for game is going to be a lot tougher against Cosmo. But all in all, I think that Monarchs are still a good deck, without a doubt. They're still really good, but I think because of the lack of any sort of support or any kind of card at all, there's nothing in Shining Victories at all that like gives Monarchs like some kind of evolutionary path forward in dealing with Cosmo and adapting with the deck. yeah, so Stormforth is like the best tool it has going for it right now, right? There's no new support that really deals with Cosmo in the same way. The extra deck variants don't really deal with Cosmo in the same extent that the extra deck version can deal with other decks. Now, overall, I think Monarchs is going to have a very good time next format. The skill-intensive mirror match means that the best players should win their mirror matches. You have a very favourable Burning Abyss matchup if you're playing the domain version. And against Cosmo, again, I think, personally, it's skewed a little bit in the favour of Cosmo, but that's not to say it's unbeatable, because it's very beatable. And I think with certain adaptations, like maining Majesty's Fiend, perhaps even Vanity's Fiend, and hopefully we'll see some other kind of tech cards appear in the future in dealing with the Cosmo matchup. What those are currently, not really too sure, to be honest with you, but I'd like to see the deck evolve in such a way that it's able to contend with Cosmo equally, because I do think they're sort of equal now, but I do think it's like a little bit in the favour of Cosmo. But going forward, you know, we might see ways in which Monarchs are able to adapt and perhaps even overcome Cosmo. So yeah, that's really just my video for today. I wanted to point out all the advantages and disadvantages of Monarchs. So like we said, Stormforth Erebus, Stormforth Ares, still some of the best plays in the game. Consistency issues, of course, on the other hand, is one of the disadvantages of Monarchs. Getting that engine going is definitely not as fast as how Cosmos get their engine going. So yeah, there's a lot of issues facing Monarchs, but I feel that there's going to be ways in which going forward, perhaps Monarchs will still be able to contend and do well, top, maybe even win a couple of big events. So we'll see. As for what I'd like to hear from you guys, give me a hashtag Stormforth in the description if you've watched this far, and let me know what you think. Do you guys think that Monarchs are going to contend against Cosmo? Do you think they're going to dominate? Do you think they're going to suck? So I'd like to hear both sides of the arguments. Let me know how you're planning to deal with Cosmos going forward with the new builds. Do you have any interesting tech cards or builds going forward that you think are going to be able to contend and dominate? So that's really all I've got to say to you. Hashtag Stormforth down below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.